There are 5 questions you should never answer, and the people asking them are rarely as trustworthy as they appear. These are not complicated questions. They do not sound like traps. They do not arrive with warning signs attached. They sound soft. They sound warm. They sound like someone who genuinely cares about you, someone who respects you, someone who simply wants to connect. And that is exactly what makes them dangerous. Let us get into it. Question 1. You trust me, right? This is the master question. This is the root. This is the one that makes every other trap on this list possible. And it is the most important question you will ever learn to stop answering automatically. Someone looks at you and says, "You trust me, right?" And everything inside you wants to say yes. Because saying no feels like an accusation. Saying no feels like you are calling them a liar. Saying no feels like you are the problem, the suspicious one, the person damaging the relationship by refusing to give them this one simple word they are asking for. So you say it. Of course I trust you. And in that single moment, the gates open. All of them. At once. Because the moment those words leave your mouth, you lock yourself into a position where questioning their behavior later suddenly makes you look like the hypocrite. You already said you trusted them. So when they act without asking and say, "You do not mind, right?" you feel unable to push back. You trusted them. When they say, "Can I be honest with you?" and use that opening to plant doubt in your mind, you stand there and absorb it. You trusted them. When they blame you for advice that did not work out, you have no defense. You trusted them. When they pressure you to reveal who told you something private, you feel the pull to answer. You trusted them. That one word, yes, becomes a blank check. And every time, they are the ones deciding how much to withdraw. And somehow the cost is always greater than what you originally intended to give. Now think about someone in your own life who once asked you this question. You trust me, right? Think about what happened after you said yes. In the weeks and months that followed, did their actions genuinely earn that trust? Or did they keep using your declaration as a shield every single time their behavior disappointed you? I thought you trusted me. You said you trusted me. Why are you questioning me if you trust me? Your own words became the chain they wrapped around you. Every time something felt wrong and you wanted to question it, you could not. Because you had already committed to not questioning, with one word, spoken before any evidence existed. Here is what nobody tells you. The people who have genuinely earned your trust never ask for it. They do not need to. Their behavior already built it. Real trust does not need a declaration. It lives in what someone does consistently over time, not in what someone asks you to say in a single conversation. The question, "You trust me, right?" is only asked by people who need the words because their actions have not been enough. They need you to say it because they cannot show it. And the moment you say it, you hand them immunity, a shield they hold up every time their behavior falls short of what they promised. Machiavelli wrote that he who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived. And this question is the mechanism of that allowance. It is the moment you lower every wall voluntarily, not because the person proved anything, but because they asked in a tone that made refusing feel cruel. The fox does not force the gate. He asks you to open it, and you do. So when someone asks, "You trust me, right?" you do not say yes and you do not say no. You say, "I pay attention to what people do." That is it. Short, clean, true. Or you say, "Actions show me that, not words." You remove the binary. You refuse to hand over the blank check. Watch the reaction. The person who genuinely deserves your trust will respect that answer. They will nod. They will move on. They do not need the words because their life already speaks loudly enough. But the person who needed that yes, the person whose next move depended on your declaration, they will press. They will push. They will get uncomfortable. And in that pressure, in that insistence, you will see exactly why they needed it. Because the behavior was never going to hold up on its own. That is the master question. Seal it first. And now watch how the other 4 lose most of their power. Question 2. Can I be honest with you? Now that they have your trust, they come for your confidence. And they do it disguised as something noble, something brave, something that makes you feel like a small person if you refuse it. Someone looks at you and says, "Can I be honest with you?" And almost automatically, you reply, "Of course," every single time. Because what kind of person refuses honesty? What kind of person says no to the truth? So you agree without thinking. And in that exact moment, you hand someone permission to say anything they want, while disguising it as a favor they are doing for you. Now think carefully about the last time someone said this to you. What came after it? Did they say something that genuinely strengthened you? Something that expanded your thinking or lifted your confidence? Or did they plant something, a seed of doubt, quietly placed inside your mind? Something that made you question yourself afterward? Something that weakened your certainty right when you needed it most? I do not think this is going to work. I am not sure you are ready for this. I just do not think you are making the right choice. And because they asked permission first, because they called it honesty, you are not allowed to be upset. They were just being honest. They were just trying to help. But watch the pattern. The person who says, "Can I be honest with you?" almost never follows it with something that builds your confidence. They follow it with criticism, with doubt, with something that slows you down and makes you smaller. And they get to do all of this while standing behind the shield of one word: honest. You cannot attack honesty. You cannot be angry at someone who is just telling the truth. Except they were not telling the truth. They were telling their perspective. And they weaponized one word to make that perspective unchallengeable. Now think about the people who genuinely have your back, the ones who are truly in your corner. When they have something difficult to say, do they ask permission first? No, they just say it. Because real honesty does not need a runway. Real honesty does not need you to lower your defenses before it arrives. The people who ask for permission first know that what they are about to say will not feel like care. And they need your agreement before you hear it. Because if they said it cold, without the setup, you would recognize it for exactly what it is. The preamble is the disguise. Remove the disguise and what is underneath is exposed. Machiavelli understood that the greatest manipulations are the ones dressed as virtues. When someone wraps their strike in the language of honesty, or courage, or concern, you cannot fight back without looking like the problem. You become the person who cannot handle truth, the sensitive one, the difficult one. And they become the brave and caring friend who was only trying to help. The frame is set before the conversation even begins. Watch what happens when you stop accepting the premise automatically. Someone asks, "Can I be honest with you?" Instead of saying, "Of course," you say, "Depends on what it is about." Or you say, "You can say whatever you want. I will decide what I do with it." Most people hesitate. They backtrack. Because the entire strategy was built on you saying yes without thinking. The moment you do not, the shield drops. They have to say the thing without the armor of honesty protecting them. And suddenly, it sounds a lot less like truth and a lot more like what it always was. An opinion they wanted to deliver without consequences. That is the second question. The honesty disguise. Question 3. What would you do if you were me? This one is the most flattering trap of the 5. Because it makes you feel important, right before it makes you responsible. Somebody comes to you. A friend, a colleague, someone you care about. They lay out their situation, a problem, a crossroads, a decision they cannot seem to make. And then they look at you with an expression that says, "I trust your judgment more than my own." And they ask, "What would you do if you were me?" And you answer. Of course you answer. Because it feels good to be the one someone turns to. It feels like real respect. So you weigh the options. You think carefully. And you give them your honest recommendation. But here is what actually happened. That person had a decision to carry, a decision with real consequences. And instead of carrying the full weight of that decision themselves, they transferred it. The moment you gave direct advice, you attached a piece of yourself to their choice. And now the outcome becomes dangerous for you either way. Because if they follow your advice and everything works out, who receives the credit? They do. In their own mind, they were the one who made the smart call. Your role quietly disappears from the story. But if they follow your advice and things fall apart, suddenly the blame has somewhere to go. Question 4. Who told you that? You confront someone. You bring up something you heard, something you saw, something you know. Maybe a lie they told. Maybe a move they made behind your back. Maybe information that proves they are not who they claim to be. And instead of addressing what you just said, instead of dealing with the substance of what you brought to them, they look at you and ask, "Who told you that?" And the entire conversation pivots. Suddenly you are not talking about what they did. You are talking about how you found out. They redirected the entire confrontation away from their behavior and aimed it directly at your source. And if you answer, if you give them a name, you have done two catastrophic things at once. You betrayed the person who trusted you with that information. And you handed the person you were confronting a target. Someone to punish. Someone to discredit. Someone to remove, so the flow of truth stops completely and they can go back to operating in the dark, unseen. Think about every time someone deflected your confrontation with, "Who told you that?" Did the conversation ever return to the original issue? Almost never. Because the redirect worked perfectly. You got pulled into defending your source. Into explaining how you found out. Into justifying why you were even looking into it. And the entire time, the person who actually did something wrong sat back and watched you scramble. They turned your confrontation into your problem, with 4 words. And you helped them do it by answering. Watch what happens when you give up the name. The person you are confronting now has a new mission. Not to address what they did. To eliminate whoever exposed it. They go after your source. They cut them off. They discredit them. They make sure nobody tells you anything ever again. And the next time they do something behind your back, you will not hear about it. Because the one person who would have told you has been burned. By you. Because you answered a question that was never about truth. It was about control. It was about shutting down the only eyes and ears you had in that space. Machiavelli wrote that the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the people he keeps around him. What he understood is that the people who bring you truth are rare. They are genuinely valuable. They are assets. And the question, "Who told you that?" exists for one purpose only. To identify and eliminate those assets. So that you go blind. So that next time, you see nothing until it is already too late. Answering this question does not make you honest. It makes you a liability to every single person who ever cared enough to tell you what was really happening around you. So when someone asks who told you that, you never give a name. Never. You bring the conversation back to the substance. It does not matter how I found out. What matters is whether it is true. Or, that is not the conversation we are having. The source stays protected. And the person who tried to redirect has nowhere to go except back to the thing they were running from. Let them sit in that. Let them deal with what they did, instead of hunting the person who had the courage to tell you about it. That is the 4th question, the source hunt. Question 5. You don't mind, right? We end with the one you encounter the most. The one that happens at work, at home, with friends, with family. The one you will recognize the instant I describe it. Someone does something that affects you. They make a decision without asking. They cross a line. They commit your time, your name, your resources, without consulting you first. They act. And after the action is already taken, after the thing is already done, they turn to you and ask, "You do not mind, right?" Or, "That is okay with you, is it not?" Or, "We are good, right?" Stop. Listen carefully to what just happened. They are not asking your permission. They already acted. The decision is made. The thing is done. That question is not a question at all. It is a notification wearing the costume of a request. And the way it is worded traps you into agreeing. Because the expected answer is, "No, I do not mind." Anything else? Anything that sounds like, "Actually, I do mind," makes you look difficult, petty, unreasonable. The question is engineered so that disagreement costs you socially. And most people will swallow the violation and say it is fine, rather than pay that cost. The person asking knows this. That is precisely why they did the thing first and asked the question second. Think about how many times this has happened to you. Someone gave away your Saturday without asking and then said, "You do not mind helping out, right?" Someone shared something private about you and then said, "You are not upset about that, are you?" Someone took credit for something you built and then said, "We are a team, so it does not matter who gets the credit, right?" Someone volunteered your time, your money, your energy, and then checked in afterward with a question that made saying no feel like starting a war. Watch what happens when you answer, "It is fine." You think you are being easygoing. You think you are keeping the peace. But the person who asked just learned something precise about you. They learned that they can act first and collect your approval second. And they will do it again. The next time, the violation will be slightly bigger, slightly more invasive, slightly more costly. Because every time you sign off on something you never chose, you raise the ceiling on what they believe they can take without asking. Machiavelli wrote that men judge more by appearances than by reality, because everyone can see but few can truly understand. The question, "You do not mind, right?" creates the appearance of consent. It makes it look like you agreed. It makes it look like you were consulted. And if you ever bring it up later, they will say, "But you said you were fine with it." The question did not just get your compliance. It got your signature on a contract you never read. So when someone hits you with, "You do not mind, right?" you do not nod. You do not say "It is fine." You say, "I would have preferred if you had asked me first." Or, "I would have handled that differently." You do not need to be angry. You do not need to make a scene. You simply stop automatically signing off on things you never chose. And the moment you do that, something shifts. People stop informing you after the fact. They start consulting you before. That movement, from someone people act on to someone people check with first, changes your entire position. And it begins with refusing to answer a single question. That is the fifth question. The retroactive permission trap. 5 questions, 5 traps, let us name them clearly one final time. You trust me, right? The master question. The blank check. The one that opens every other gate. Answered it and you handed someone immunity before they did a single thing to earn it. Can I be honest with you? The honesty disguise. Permission to strike while standing behind the shield of one word. Answered it and you lowered your guard right before someone used it against you. What would you do if you were me? The decision transfer. The flattering trap that makes you feel respected right before it makes you responsible. Answered it and you placed your name on someone else's choice and their consequences. Who told you that? The source hunt. The redirect that turns your confrontation into their investigation. Answered it and you burned the one person who cared enough to tell you the truth. You do not mind, right? The retroactive permission trap. The notification dressed as a question. Answered it and you signed a contract you never read. Now look at your own life with all five in mind. Who around you keeps acting first and asking later, because they have learned you will always say it is fine? Who uses the word honest right before they plant doubt inside your head? Who keeps coming to you for advice but somehow makes it your fault when things fall apart? Who deflected the last time you confronted them by asking how you found out, instead of addressing what they actually did? And who in your life keeps asking you to trust them with words, because they have not been able to show you with actions? Answer those questions honestly. Because the answers will show you exactly who has been running these 5 questions on you. And how long it has been working. These 5 questions happen every day. At work. At home. Over dinner. Over text. From people you care about. From people you barely know. And until right now, you answered every single one of them automatically. Without pausing. Without choosing. Without realizing that in each of those moments, something was being quietly taken from you. You approve things you never truly chose. You opened doors because someone disguised their opinion as honesty. You placed your name on decisions that were never yours to carry. You exposed the people who trusted you because pressure became louder than your own judgment. And you handed out blank checks of trust to people whose actions should have been a proof, if the trust had actually been deserved. All 5 traps were running around you constantly. And most of the time, you never realized it was happening. That is how smooth these questions are. That is how invisible the extraction becomes. It feels like conversation. It feels like connection. It feels like being a good and caring person. But it is not the behavior of a protected person. Now you can finally hear it. Now when someone says, "You trust me, right?" you hear the blank check sliding across the table. And you do not pick up the pen. Now when someone says, "Can I be honest with you?" you hear the setup arriving before the strike ever lands. Now when someone asks, "What would you do in my situation?" you feel the weight beginning to shift toward your shoulders. And instead of absorbing it, you let it pass right by you. Now when someone asks, "Who told you that?" you hear the redirect clearly. And you hold the original frame without releasing a single name. Now when someone says, "You do not mind, right?" you recognize the manufactured consent being assembled underneath the words. And you stop yourself from signing. You hear all 5 now. And you cannot unhear them. This is not about suspecting everyone around you. Some people in your life are genuinely safe. Some people have proven that through years of consistent action, not through asking for declarations in a single conversation. This is about becoming intentional. About choosing what you give, instead of giving everything by reflex. The difference between someone who gets maneuvered constantly and someone who cannot be moved is not intelligence. It is not experience. It is that pause. That single beat of silence between the question and your answer, where you stop reacting and start choosing. Build that pause starting today. The next time someone asks one of these 5 questions, do not answer on reflex. Let a beat pass. Feel what the question is pulling from you. And then decide. Give something if it has been genuinely earned. Give nothing if it has not. But make it a choice. Not a habit. Not a reflex. Not a social obligation. A deliberate and conscious choice. Because the difference between someone who is constantly readable and someone who cannot be outmaneuvered is not personality. It is discipline. And that discipline lives entirely in the silence between the question and the answer. In the coming days, something is going to shift. And you will feel it in real time. Conversations will feel different. Not tense. Not guarded. Just clearer. You will notice the exact moment someone asks for retroactive permission instead of real permission. You will catch the word honest being loaded before a strike arrives. You will feel the weight of someone's decision sliding toward you. And you will sidestep it cleanly. You will hold your sources when someone tries to redirect a confrontation. And you will remain completely calm when someone asks for trust they have not yet built. And the people around you will sense it. They will not be able to name what changed. You will not seem cold or distant or difficult. But something about you will feel different. More solid. Harder to move. Like someone who does not get backed into corners anymore. Like someone whose yes actually means something, because it stopped being automatic. People treat you differently when they realize you cannot be answered into compliance. When they understand that your silence is a deliberate choice and that your agreement has to be genuinely earned. That shift changes everything. Not because you demanded respect, but because you stopped giving it away for free. One question at a time. Machiavelli spent his life watching power move between people. And the single clearest pattern he found was this. The people who fall are never the ones who get overpowered. They are the ones who get asked the right question, from the right person, at the right moment. And everything collapses. Not through force. Through a conversation that felt completely safe, until it was not. 5 centuries later, the questions have changed their surface appearance. But they have not changed their function. They still extract. They still disarm. They still position the person asking above the person answering. And the only defense that has ever worked is the one you now carry. The pause. The space. The ability to hear a question and choose, instead of comply. Most people will go their entire lives answering every question that comes their way. Nodding when they should go still. Agreeing when silence would have protected them. Explaining themselves when walking away was the only response that made sense. And later they will wonder why they keep ending up in situations they never truly chose. Carrying burdens they never intended to carry. Defending decisions that were never actually theirs. And most of them will never trace the damage back to the conversations that created it. They will never hear the question hidden underneath the question itself. But you will. Because now you hear it. If something shifted in you while listening to this, something that refuses to shift back, then write this in the comments. I guard my answers. Let me see how many people are done being the person who always says yes, always over-explains, and always gives access simply because someone asked in the right tone. Stay protected. Stay cold.